Hey, how's it going? This is my Brookline Tai Chi class report for early spring 2012. And I always like the early spring session because we're about halfway through our school year. And what that means from our curriculum point of view is that there are always a group of people who are now starting to think about learning the long form in the fall. And we're lucky to have the kind of curriculum and flow that we do because we always have a discrete group of people starting that form, and we spread out learning the initial choreography of the form over about a year. So September is always the big start date for the long form. And people think about learning it, they go back and forth for a long time before they decide to make that commitment to learning that practice. Me personally, I did short form for about 7 years before I learned the long form. And some of that was due to other circumstances, but all of our students get a really solid foundation in the short form, at least 2 or 3 years, if not longer, before they move into long form. But it's still, even though it's people with a lot of Tai Chi background, it's exciting because it's a big jump up in their practice. So that group is just starting to do one more round through the short form in order to prep for the long form. And in some of my short form classes, we're starting, in all of the short form classes actually, we're starting again at the beginning of the form, halfway through the year. So you get this really cyclical approach to it, and that always means people shuffle levels a little bit, move up, move back, and find a new spot to start the form again from the beginning, and they start to break it down again. So I always like coming back to the beginning of the form and taking a fresh look at it. In this session, specifically in the level 4 leg power class, we're going back and revisiting material we did in September. And if you remember, all of that stuff came out of a lot of in-depth work we did with Bruce over the summer in England at the short form instructor training. So we've taken one group through that material. A lot of them are cycling back through it again, but there are new folks joining us in that class too. For early spring in the Qigong classes, that means we reintroduce the marriage of heaven and earth. And that practice, we've got a group, most of the people in this group have done a fair amount of heaven and earth, so it's cool to kind of get them to come back. They've been doing a lot of energy gates and gods in the meantime, and so cycling back to heaven and earth, what you usually find is that because you've done work on other sets, different stuff is open inside your body, or you have a different perspective on what was going on in the form. So you can kind of access different things every time you come back to it. Specifically, we're focusing on getting the spine to bow and really starting to work the C curve of the spine. And the goal, where I hope this group kind of comes out at the end of the session, is they start to get a feel for what it's like to drive the movements from the spine. We talk about 3 main drivers in Qigong and Tai Chi. First, you learn to work with the Kwa, and that's really at the stage where you're coordinating the arms and the legs and getting the arms and legs to bend and bow. The next stage, what I'm working with this group now on, is getting the bowing action of the spine and getting that connected. And so that's an exciting stage, because that, to go from doing arms and legs a lot to starting to at least work on the process of how they connect into the spine and use the spine as a driver, that completely changes the feeling of all the movements. So it's cool to watch people kind of get a sense for where their spine is at and start to develop a feel for opening up the spine and keeping length through the spine, learning to control these much more finer articulations, and really clear up a lot of stuff that if you're doing everything from the arms and legs before, you kind of tug on the spine. But by being able to drive from the spine, you can release a lot of stagnant stuff and stuck things in the body. So that's a pretty cool stage for this group to be at. And overall, I mean, our beginner flow is strong. People are coming in, getting exposed to the practices, and I always appreciate that, starting from the very beginning and trying to learn, okay, what does this stuff do to the body? How do I start to understand how it works on my body? How does it slow my mind down? And I always just feel really fortunate that at Brookline Tai Chi, I can work with students who are at day 1, who are at 3 years, who are at 10 years or 20 years. And everybody's at a kind of different stage along that developmental continuum. So I'm lucky to be able to do that, to have my own practice and to have a space where we can all get together and practice. And yeah, that's the deal. That's what's going on at Brookline Tai Chi, early spring 2012. Thanks.